Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football and welcome back to Football Theory. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Pleased to be joined by my esteemed colleague and good friend and fellow football theorist, Jeff Howe. This edition of Football Theory brought to you by, of course, accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. Let's just give her a shout out real quick before we dive into it. Football Theory brought to you by accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. Laura and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but she is a longtime Austin real estate expert. So if you have any concerns or questions regarding real estate in the Austin area, please don't hesitate to reach out to Laura and her team, 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. Or you can reach out to her at laura@andyallenteam.com. That's laura@andyallenteam.com. So thank you very much to Laura Baker and her team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football. Now, usually on Football Theory, we come up with our own theories, and at times we can get those theories confirmed, and sometimes those theories are just theories, no matter how strongly we feel about them. Well, Jeff actually got a chance to confirm one of our theories that we have talked about actually earlier this season on Football Theory with Sark at SEC Media Days.
Yeah, so I had a chance to ask Sark, and there's a lot of different scrums and press conferences and breakouts. And one of those, I got a chance to ask Sark about what we talked about, which is Texas recruiting. We know Texas recruiting bigger receivers, like bigger frames, bigger body guys. Was it intentional? Is it just kind of a byproduct of we evaluated these receivers and these are the best guys on the board and they just happen to be? And Sark actually confirmed, Rod, that yes, it's been intentional. And the main thing he cited was we know Texas runs a ton of perimeter screens, right? They run bubbles and all different kinds of screens. And when you're playing in the SEC, obviously you're going to be facing bigger corners. You better be able to hold up physically on the outside and block. Otherwise, your perimeter screen game is going to go to crap. So it was intentional. He mentioned Ryan Wingo, which you look at the updated roster. I mean, Wingo's 6'2", 214. Emmett Mosley's a bigger frame guy. Parker Livingstone is a bigger frame guy. Even like Khalil Lockett and Jamie French, they're a long way away from filling out. But both those guys are kind of wider frame type guys, even for leaner, sleeker receivers. So it does seem like Sark is getting away from the Devontae Smith, Xavier Worthy kind of model receiver. But we know those guys are kind of unicorns in and of themselves anyway. I think this is more of a surefire way to make sure, hey, we got to make sure our perimeter screen game is good, but holding up against the physical defensive backs you're going to face in the SEC, which are the kind of DBs you're going to need to face to win a national championship, it's about holding up and winning those battles against those type guys.
Yeah, I think, the theory was confirmed that it was intentional and it's deliberate, right? That the receivers are bigger and they're getting bigger. When he brought up just the kind of for the SEC, it makes sense because to win the SEC, you got to beat some of the best teams in the country. Those are also, as we talked about, our theory was, hey, you make a run in the college football playoff, you're going to play a lot of teams that got some of the best corners and have some of the best man-to-man coverage defenders. And I went back and got my notes from that conversation. Went and looked at Oregon's the man coverage rate overall in college football. The average man coverage rate is around 26%. That's the average man coverage rate. But Ohio State was 32%. Oregon was above 30%. Clemson was almost 34%. Notre Dame was the highest in the country. They're like 53%. That's crazy. Penn State, 38%. Georgia was below. Arizona State below. Tennessee was kind of below that 26. They were like at 24, and Texas was around 20%. But for the most part, we're talking about the best teams in the country. They're going to play a lot more man coverage. Bigger receivers, at least that's the anecdotal belief. And I think analytically, it also is backed up that bigger receivers have more success versus man-to-man coverage. And Texas, I think that's also going to be one of the added benefits of this new methodology of having bigger receivers on the outside.
Yeah, the other thing Sark mentioned too, Roddy, he and Chris Jackson basically sat down and looked at it and they said, look, to succeed in this conference and to go win a national championship, you either need two things at wide receiver. You better either have elite speed or elite size and physicality. And I think it's just easier for them to recruit elite size and physicality because when you're recruiting elite speed, You can recruit guys that are playing fast, but like we said, and Xavier Worthy, Devontae Smith, those guys are few and far between. I mean, finding guys that are legit world-class fast, there's only so many of those guys. I don't want to say guys like Ryan Wingo grow on trees, but you can find probably more 6'2"-ish, 200-pound receivers who can run rather than, 165-pound receivers who can hold up physically in a league like the SEC. So that's just the way they've decided to do it. And I don't disagree with it. Now, Sark didn't get into this, but we've also talked about how different the route tree could be this year. And I do think when you're going to have some longer developing routes, because I still think it's going to change with Arch Manning at quarterback route. I think they're going to go more like old school, hard play action. Your deeper in cuts, your deeper stop routes, your deeper comebacks, those stuff with Arch with that NFL arm, those throws he can make. It's less of your and we talked about too in terms of explosive plays. Your explosive plays now are going to be less about yards after the catch and more our quarterback can now get the ball to the point on the field where we're creating the explosive play. So At that point, it's less about yak and more about contested catches. Well, what type of receivers are better at contested catches? Bigger bodied receivers. Now, like you go back and look, there are some guys that put up freaky numbers. Like when Texas got Silas Bolden out of the portal, we went back and looked. Like Silas Bolden, even at his size, his last year at Oregon State, I think he had one of the best contested catch rates in the country. But again, he's a unicorn. He's unique in that role. You can envision a guy like Parker Livingstone or Ryan Wingo or Emmett Mosley. You can envision those guys having high contested catch rates because of their ability to put themselves between the defender and the ball, and with their size, not just being able to go up and catch it at the point, but being able to catch it in traffic. So again, I just think it's all about longevity over a season, and those bigger bodied guys are more likely to hold up the longer you go through a season. Especially now, Rod, you're talking about basically playing an NFL season. Like you're playing 16, 17 games. So you need guys that can physically hold up over a long stretch of time.
Yeah, I think that's a part of the theory we were hoping that Sark would confirm that he never did, that maybe this is an Arch preference, right? Yeah. Maybe with you reinventing the offense every season, as Sark says he does, with whatever the skill set of the quarterback is going to be, that he thought, no, Sark that Arch needs bigger receivers because of the vertical route tree that you're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. The comebacks and the deep six routes, some of those more old school, traditional West Coast concepts, that he's going to throw those back into the offense. And that also, the contested catch ability you talk about. And by the way, Emmett Mosley he's one of the highest contested catch rates for a freshman wide receiver last season. And Ryan Wingo, I'm sure, he has that kind of ability. And we haven't seen it from Parker Livingstone, but he's got that kind of frame. I also love to kind of piggyback on that point. The scramble drill, I think, and I've been saying this, I think it's going to be a big part of the offense. It's going to lead to a lot of explosive plays for you because Arch has the ability to improvise his second reaction plays, the off-schedule plays. And with those bigger receivers, man, scramble drill, contested catchability, as you talk about, I think that's another added element. Not saying that's something, Sark wants to major in. He likes to be on schedule. But I do think it's something that Arch actually, I think it's something he excels at. I think it's one of his elite traits is his off-schedule improv second reaction ability. And we haven't seen the scramble drill at Texas for some time. Bam Bam Sam was a great scrambler, but they didn't practice the scramble drill. I think Sark, with his meticulous, attention to detail, knowing that that's a possibility, I think he'll actually practice the scramble drill, try his best to perfect the scramble drill. That's one of my predictions too, and that's why these bigger wide receivers also fit into that. Not that Sark would even say that if that was his intention, you'd be giving way too much away. But I do think that is a possibility.
When we talk about scramble drill situations, like I still go back to look at Arch's first career touchdown. The first touchdown he ever threw in a Texas uniform, it was in the Colorado State game. It was on a scramble situation. It was him extending a play, trying to make something out of nothing. And it was just that little flip to Silas Bolden, bro. It was like a 4 or 5 yard touchdown. That's the kind of stuff you're going to get with Arch that you didn't get with Quinn. And look, we can say a lot of really good things about Quinn as a quarterback, but the one thing you didn't have, and the injuries played a big role in it, is once the play broke down, it was pretty much broken down. Like you weren't really going to get anything off of that. that's something that, again, to your point, and we'll keep using the Sarkism, it's not something he wants to major in, but I do think it's one of those things that, hey, break glass in case of emergency. If you need to pull out the scramble drill, because Arch is going to be vulnerable in those situations. And again, I think a lot of the quarterback run game, it's about minimizing the risk and minimizing the exposure that Arch has. But there are going to be some games, probably the Ohio State game, maybe that Florida game in non-conference, definitely the Georgia game. When you look down the schedule, there's going to need to be games where you're going to have to use some more quarterback run, and you're going to have to let Arch just kind of scramble and ad-lib and go do his thing. But you want to minimize those risks. So I just think, Rod, it's something that Sark wants to have in his back pocket, and it can be a weapon. It's just not going to be something that I think, for all the reasons we talked about, that he wants to rely on.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it'll be more of a Arch-initiated thing.
Yeah.
I think Arch naturally, when plays break down, he has great instincts, and I think he wants to use those. And Sark has said on the record, I'm paraphrasing, I don't want to dull his instincts. He has great natural instincts. I don't want to take that away from him. So I do think you'll get when to play. And you got a young offensive line, right? So an offensive line is going to be good now. But it may, because the individual pieces are there, but it may take a few games for that offensive line to gel. And you got a haymaker in game one. So I'm with you. I think early on, you may see more of that, especially in those non-conference games against teams where we know Texas has a clear advantage talent-wise. You may see more of that scramble ability just in if there are some issues on the offensive line with pass protection, with continuity early on with those guys.
Yeah, the other thing too, Rod, I was thinking about this, and there's a football theory point that I want to make before we get out of here that Sark made, and I thought was just really cool in that same setting that I was with him. But we talk about extending the play, and we talk about checkdowns in the short passing game. I feel like it's going to be, less screen heavy, less RPO reliant than the offense has been. We talked about that, but going back and look at some of the numbers from last year. First off, I wrote a piece early this week at ontexasfootball.com where basically, like, the disrespect for Trey Wisner doesn't extend to defenders in the SEC. Like, they respect the fact that this guy went out and had a 1,000-yard season, grinding out yards in the SEC. Like, they respect him for that. But you look at, like, just how reliant the offense was on Trey Wisner. There were only 7 running backs last year. This is according to Pro Football Focus. There were only 7 running backs in the country last year that had at a minimum of 200 rushing attempts and a minimum of 50 targets in the pass game.
Wow.
Trey Wisner was one of those guys. So the usage for Trey Wisner was heavy. I just feel like it's going to be, one of the things, in terms of just kind of Arch's athleticism helping you out. Quinn was really good in the screen game, and I'm talking about like old school, like throwback screens with the running backs. But I think respecting Arch's run, if you can make some of those, and Sark does a really good job of this, if you can make some of those screens look like boots or waggles where the quarterback's on the move and get everybody flowing with Arch, now you're going to create a lot of great opportunities for Trey Wisner and C.J. Baxter when he's healthy and the other running backs. So I think part of the running back passing game too, it might the short game and the behind the line of scrimmage game, it might be more getting the running backs involved than the receivers per se than we've seen the last few years.
No, to your point, and I totally agree. And Sark even said that that's what Arch has got to work on. Some of those touch throws, and he's talking about the underneath throws and some of these swing routes to the running backs, those swing screens and some of those throwback screens. Say what you want about Quinn. Quinn had great touch and ball placement with those plays. Mm-hmm. If he was off platform or he was off balance. And for Arch, I don't think that comes natural to Arch. Arch is his I would say his accuracy is more on display on vertical shots down the field. And we'll see that even on the deep throws. And Sark said that too. Said he wants him to work on some of the subtle nuances, which I think, like you said, is more being on schedule with that running back passing game. Because those targets have to be, those are quick, usually coming out fast. And you have to throw them from different off-platform, off-balance situations. But you got to be accurate. Ball's got to be on the money. If that running back's got to reach back for that ball, that throws the entire timing of the screen off. It's got to be right on him. And Quinn was great at that, actually. That's just one of the things that maybe Arch has got to work on just a little bit. And I think you're right. That's a great way early on to kind of get Arch in the groove too, man, with those running back targets.
Yeah. The other thing from that meeting, Rob, that I wanted to bring up, and I think this just shows you, I love, in terms of football theory, kind of how, where where one kind of concept evolves and what branches out from there. Somebody asked Sark about Lavelle Edwards because Sark played for him at BYU. And you go back to when Lavelle Edwards, when they were in the heyday at BYU, they were throwing the football really before anybody else was. I mean, BYU was slinging it all over the field. You think about the quarterbacks, they had Jim McMahon, Steve Young, Robbie Bosco was their quarterback when they won a national championship. Mike Holmgren was on that staff. And you start looking at Lavelle Edwards and everybody that branches out from his coaching tree that was under that BYU coaching tree, Andy Reid, Mike Holmgren, Norm Chow was a part of that. And Sark added one that I honestly, I didn't think about at the time, but Mike Leach is from that BYU tree. So now you got the air raid in there. So now, and then you talk about all the different versions of the air raid. And Sark even said, hey, from the Lavelle Edwards tree, everybody kind of has their own spin on what they feel like, hey, let's take the root of this, the core of it, but I want to make it my own. Mike Holmgren did that. And if you look at what Andy Reid's doing now, it's very different than the old school 90s West Coast Mike Holmgren offense. And so it's just cool that Sark is a part of that, really kind of the almost other than Don Coryell, you can look at the modern passing game and trace a lot of it back to Lavelle Edwards at BYU and what branched out from there, and for Sark to be a part of that. But I was also thinking about it too, because Rod, once you get going down the rabbit hole, you don't stop. I mentioned Don Coryell because Eric Coryell, a lot of the vertical passing game concepts that we know in football today originated with Don Coryell. And that Don Coryell influence, I think we're going to see a lot of that from Sark. And the Don Coryell influence comes from his time with Norv Turner, which Norv Turner's from that Ernie Zampese branch of the Don Coryell tree. A lot of that's predicated on the vertical passing game. As a kid watching a lot of Dallas Cowboys in the 90s, what was it? It was a lot of boom, boom, boom. We're going to run the football, have a physical downhill run game. But when we throw the ball, brother, there's going to be hard play action, and we're going down the field. Troy Aikman's not getting paid to throw a 2-yard hitch. He's getting paid to throw that slant to Michael Irvin, that deep ball to Alvin Harper. You're going down the field. So I think that Don Coryell, Ernie Zampese, Norv Turner influence on Sark, as you look at the vertical throws that Arch can make in this offense, I think you'll see a lot of that too this year. So that kind of stuff, just as my football brain gets working, and this is the time of year where it really gets working, I just think that stuff is so cool, just to be able to trace back what the 2025 Texas offense could be and be able to trace back the stuff that happened decades ago.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff, Jeff, as always, brother. Let's thank our fantastic sponsor one more time before we end today's program. Let's thank Laura Baker and her team. Football Theory brought to you by accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. Laura and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. So if you have any questions or concerns regarding real estate in the Austin area, don't hesitate. Reach out today at 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. Or you can reach out to Laura Baker at laura@andyallenteam.com. That's laura@andyallenteam.com. And thank you very much to Laura Baker and her team for sponsoring Football Theory. Thank you, Jeff. Great stuff as always. Great knowledge. Love our Football Theory conversations. Thank you guys out there for joining and watching and listening. We appreciate you guys as always. And we'll be back next week for another edition of Football Theory. For Jeff and for accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker, I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, Hook 'em Horns.